Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to see such a great turnout today. I'm Kate Gary. I'm president of Thrive Inspiring ND Women, and we are an employee resource group focusing on increasing opportunities for women to be recruited, retained, and advanced as leaders at Notre Dame. As part of our Champions for Change theme this year, Thrive is so excited to present Laura Schwab, president of Aston Martin Americas, the iconic luxury performance car company. In this role, Laura oversees sales, service, marketing, and communications to Aston Martin's customers and dealers within North, Central, and South America. When she took the job and became the first female president in the Aston Martin's 106-year history, the Americas were responsible for less than 20% of the company's sales. Now they are responsible for 45% of the company's sales. Talk about making an impact. Before racing to the top of the male-dominated automotive industry, Laura, a Kentucky native, attended Notre Dame on a full tennis scholarship, majoring in government and Spanish. She also holds a law degree from the University of Kentucky. In a recent interview with Notre Dame magazine, Laura said the hard part of her career journey was that there were no other women to look to as role models, but that it actually turned out to be a benefit because she was able to create her own style and forge her own path. Throughout her impressive career, Laura has been an inspirational example of how to be yourself, become your own champion, break barriers for women, open doors for others. And that's what Champions for Change and Thrive are all about. And that's why we are so excited to have her here today.
I almost started tearing up, so that was a really nice introduction. Thank you very much, Kate, and I'm so happy to be standing in this beautiful building. I don't think we had buildings that looked like this when I was at Notre Dame. I don't even know my way around anymore. I'm like, I'm finding the same quad I used to be on. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here. Oh yeah, there's a spot up here. No, don't stand. I talk a lot, so really, I promise. We're going to wish you had a glass of wine too, but there's a spot up here at the front. So I'm going to spend 45 minutes talking about myself, which hopefully will be somewhat interesting. And then I'll give y'all a chance to ask me questions. So as mentioned, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. My parents are here, so the one dude, that's my dad. Oh, that was another one, thanks. I always love when there's men here, so thank you for supporting us. And my dad, a doctor, my mom a nurse, and very, very traditional childhood. At a very young age, my parents realized I was a little bit different, meaning I was slightly over-competitive as a small person. If I didn't get a perfect score in a paper, I would literally rip it up. I was the kid that tipped over the Scrabble board when I was losing, which was really not very well received in our household. We used to do a thing called cotillion in the South, where you learn how to ballroom dance, which should be it sounds so incredibly civilized. Well, I would literally knock girls over to win the games, to get the bag of M&Ms. There'll be a theme here about accomplishing things to get food, so it's been a motivation factor my entire life. So at a young age, they were like, well, maybe ballet and brownies and piano isn't really enough for her. And they played tennis, and I used to follow them to tennis courts. I begged to play tennis, and I was like, please, please, please let me play. So when I turned 10, they let me start taking tennis lessons. And tennis really became an opportunity for me to channel some of my aggression and my competitive spirit. And when you start to sort of glom onto something like that, and for me it was tennis, it really started to set a direction for me. I felt like I had a purpose, but it also meant I didn't have a traditional high school career. I wasn't going to prom and doing all these things. I was up early, practicing, going to class, getting picked up by coaches, jumping rope, and doing the whole thing over again. I was so woefully unpopular in high school though, so this has actually ended up being a good thing because I had a place to sort of channel my competitive nature, and the school had to kind of like me because I was winning the state tennis championship, so all that was really good. So I reached my senior year, and I'm I really want to go to a college on a tennis scholarship. We knew this was going to happen. I was a pretty good player. And so my criteria were top 20 tennis, top 20 academics. And that is this microphone going okay? Okay, fine, cool. So I kind of was like, I'm looking at Stanford, you're looking at Duke, maybe Vanderbilt. And growing up Catholic, my parents really wanted someone to go to Notre Dame. So of course I was definitely not going to go to Notre Dame because they wanted it so badly, which is what you do as a 17-year-old kid. So anyway, I was like, fine, I don't really think Notre Dame's going to be perfect for me, but I came for my recruiting trip. And the university's really, really smart about this. They don't bring you here in like January. Of course not. They bring you here in like October on a beautiful fall day on a football weekend. And I was hooked and I fell in love with Notre Dame. And there was only one scholarship my year, so I desperately wanted it. And fortunate for me, the team selected me to be the person to get the scholarship. So I come to Notre Dame ready to play tennis. And I finally felt like I started to fit in. I looked around and people looked like me and being part of the team. Tennis is an individual sport, and then all of a sudden you get to this amazing university and you're not just representing yourself anymore, you're representing 8 other people and the university. So I got here and I felt really excited about what tennis was doing for me. But then there's this moment in time and you're literally a sophomore. So think about it, I'm 19 years old, and they're like, well, what do you want your major to be? Like, I've got no idea. I've spent the last, 9 years playing tennis and getting good grades, but major sounds really important. My freshman year, I took the calculus that is like the one you take if you're gonna go to be pre-med, because like my dad's a doctor. I'm like, well, maybe I'll do that. I got like a C-, and I started panicking. I'd never gotten a C in my life. I was like, okay, we're gonna rule out medical school. That's a definite no. And I think you'll see this probably a lot with the students here. They kind of fall into a major because you don't really know what feels right. I fell into government and Spanish. Is government even like an offer? I guess like poli-sci. You can't like major in government anymore, right? Anyway, it's not the most marketable of majors, but I was like, I'll pick a major. We'll sort of figure this thing out. I don't really know that much about the government, and I'm not fluent in Spanish. I don't know. I went to school, so I don't know. It's like I don't know if it's like an indictment on anyone, but. Yeah, it's not good. So, loved my time at Notre Dame. I felt like, representing the school and playing sports was, quite literally a dream come true. Playing in the NCAA tournament is fantastic. But then you start reaching your senior year, and then the next set of panic starts to set in. Okay, I'm going to graduate, hopefully, with a government Spanish degree. I don't think I'm going to be a professional tennis player. Now what? It's interesting because I spoke to some students this morning that are on the rowing team, and they're going through the exact same thing, and they're panicked about jobs. Anyway, I wasn't so much panicked about jobs. I was like, I've had this successful life so far. My parents are so proud of me. I've been this superstar tennis player. I'm like, what are they going to tell their friends? What am I going to do? So I made the brave choice to take the LSAT, and I did pretty well. I started applying to law schools. I got into a few, and I got into the University of Kentucky. I'm like, I'll go home. I'll go to Kentucky. I'll go to law school. And clearly I'm going to be a lawyer, even though I have no idea what that even means. And I'm not sure if I want to be a lawyer. So the summer, we graduate. The only reason I was allowed to walk out of here with my diploma, I told this story earlier today, I had like $500 of parking tickets because I had finagled my way on this campus so often. And my mom had to go over the morning of graduation and pay them all off. So they finally let me graduate from Notre Dame after paying my parking fines. Anyway, the summer before I was really lucky because as part of the tennis team, they let us go to Europe. And we played at like Roland Garros, so we had this amazing European trip to play tennis. I was having the time of my life. Graduated from Notre Dame. I've got something that we can tell people I'm doing, which is going to law school, which sounds unbelievably impressive. And I'm thinking I'm gonna get to law school, and it's like, I'm gonna be like Elle Wood. It's like, I'm gonna in there, like, rocking this blonde hair, hanging out. FYI, if you ever decide to go back and go to law school, there's actually an assignment before the first day. I did not know this. I come, like, streaming in after weeks of eating pasta and drinking wine in Italy, and apparently there was an assignment. And not only that, and I remember this so vividly my first day of law school, everyone knew they wanted to be a lawyer. I was buying time. I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. This will at least give me 3 more years to start figuring it out. Which is an interesting path to go ahead and get a doctorate to figure out what the hell you want to do in life. But I start law school, and I would say those 3 years were probably some of the toughest 3 years of my life, which is why I have so much compassion and empathy, especially for people starting their careers young. And I remember after the first semester, I sat down with my dad, and I was like, I don't know about this law school thing. I mean, it was so competitive. And I think I'd maybe left all of my competitiveness on the tennis courts here or something, but it felt really, really hard. I went from going to the University of Notre Dame, captain of the tennis team, and now I'm like an okay law student. So I sit down with my dad, and I was like, I don't think this is for me. Maybe I should just go ahead and drop out after the first semester. And I think he knew that if I went ahead and gave it another semester, you're like a third of the way there, I probably wasn't going to quit. So I finished the first year. I sort of muddled through law school, not always making the best choices, but I went ahead and graduated. So it seems like it should all be really straightforward, right? You've got a law degree, you're going to go be a lawyer. But I still didn't know what kind of law. Everyone else seemed to be so prepared. They've done all these internships. I was just trying to sort of get by. And I started practicing, and I was dabbling in contract law, which is, let's be frank, contract law is maybe the second least interesting form of law to practice. So I was agonizing one day over a semicolon or a colon, and I was like, I don't think I can make this choice. It's too hard. And I'm like, I'm 24, 25 years old, and I'm unwilling to make a choice about a very simple form of punctuation. And I decided, maybe practicing law, maybe this also isn't my path. We laugh about it now, but obviously my parents are like, what the hell is wrong with you? You've gone to law school, you've been trained to be a lawyer, just go be a lawyer and act like a normal person, kind of. Anyway, I was like, I just don't think it's for me, and I'm not quite prepared to settle down in Kentucky and be a lawyer. So I had some friends living in California, and I thought, maybe I'll apply for some job in California. Like, you don't know. Maybe someone will take a chance on me. But I was like, they're definitely not going to take a chance on a girl that has a resume that says she's basically done nothing, and she's from Louisville, Kentucky. So I was like, can I use your all's address on my resume? So it looks like I haven't ever worked, but at least I'm located in the right geographic place. So I use their address, and I take my resume, which says, thank goodness I went to this university, because I can't tell you how many doors it opened for me just to be able to say that I went here. So I went to Notre Dame, I was captain of the tennis team, I went to law school. That's me. So I started applying for jobs, and any job. And at low level, it didn't matter. I just wanted a job, and I got rejected from every single job I applied for. And when I would be like, oh, okay, well, why? Well, you don't have any experience. Yeah, no shit. I'm trying to get experience. Like, people must show up with no experience. Like, why are you interviewing? You obviously, no, I don't. You got my resume in front of you. So, and I was getting ready to sort of pack things up and move back to Kentucky and probably take the place in life that I was supposed to. And I saw an ad, and it was on monster.com, and it basically had 3 criteria. Looking for energetic, boom, got that. Hardworking, can do that too. And blah, 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 knows something about the internet. I was like, ooh, don't have that one. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and apply for this job, and I walk in the door. This is the last place I'm going to go, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going back to Kentucky. So I walk in the door, and I started to talk about my huge background of basically going to school. And they started asking me questions like, well, what do you know about the internet? I didn't even know what their business proposition was. They're like, what do you know about the internet? I'm like, I don't know that much about the internet. I'm a lawyer. What do you know about cars? I'm like, cars? Love cars. Got a Volkswagen Jetta, people. So I was like, I love cars. Like, they are my passion. They are not, but that was a little white lie to get through the interview. Anyway, the company happened to be a little startup that was selling cars online. So I finished the interview, I stand up and I walk to the door. The HR manager greets me at the door. I guess the CEO had said, don't let that brain get to the door. So when you have a Notre Dame degree, and a law degree, people think you're like really, really smart, even if I'm not, but I'm sort of am. But anyway, so I'm like, you're offering me a job? I will do anything. Like, you are going to be our 11th employee. I'm like, what am I doing? They're like, all sorts of things. I'm like, sounds really good. I'm like, am I going to get a paycheck? They're like, we are going to pay you $20,000. Boom. I got employment. Now, when you're young and you have no idea what $20,000 is in Southern California, it's not very much. It actually, like, it literally doesn't, not only does it not pay the bills, it doesn't even pay, like, the food bills. So, and I got all these stock options because I was promised that I would be a multimillionaire at a very young age, which clearly hasn't happened because I'm still, working really hard. So, anyway, I take the job and then I realize it's not enough money to really, make ends meet. And, my parents had been so generous and they paid for my law degree. They would have helped if I asked. I just refused to ask for help. So I ended up getting 2 more jobs. One of them was doing some basic accounting for some guy. By the way, I got a government degree. What do I know about accounting? Nothing. He must have been super desperate, but he didn't pay me that much. And then the other job, and I don't know, I always ask people this because I think it's funny. Have you ever done this, with your friends? Have you ever done, what's the weirdest job you've ever had? It's hysterical when you find out jobs that people have had. My weirdest job was on the weekends. Have you heard of this guy, Tony Robbins? He's a motivational speaker. He's in Shallow Hal, all that stuff, right? They needed people to write responses to fan mail, I came to your seminar, you've changed my life, blah, blah. I was the person I'm so glad you were there, thank you so much. But the one thing I didn't know how to do was write. I had a law degree, so I would write these huge diatribes, what's taking her so long? And I'd be they're oh, these letters are gorgeous. So I'd write these huge, long letters back to people to thank them for attending seminars. So that's how I made ends meet. And things were going okay. I didn't know what the next path would be. If someone had said, where are you going to be in 5 years? I have no idea. I've gotten my first job, and I'm getting a paycheck, and this is cool. So you also never know who you're going to meet along the way. And the people that you meet, and the people that you're probably sitting in this room with, are very, very important to your life. And I met a guy at this startup company who was actually, one of the digital pioneers in the automotive space. And I'm still very good friends with him, and he's a mentor of mine. He got a job at Land Rover, and he's like, look, you need to listen to me. You're not going to become a multimillionaire at age 26. I hate to break it to you. But I think I can maybe get you a job at Land Rover because they need to build a website. You know how to build websites now. They need to put this thing called a configurator, where you pick all your paints and your colors and all that stuff. They need to put this thing on the website. So you could be a contract employee. I was like, so is it a real employee? He's like, no, but if you work really, really hard, you might they might actually hire you full time. So I decided that the startup wasn't going to work out. I quit there, and I take my now enormous resume, and I go to work at Land Rover, and I always say to my mom and dad, I used my law degree once. I wrote my first contract for employment at Land Rover, which was actually pretty well written, and I definitely had all of my meals reimbursed, which was clearly, again, a theme of concern for me. So I needed to eat, basically. So I'll never forget my first day at Land Rover. I'd been working at this startup company. We wore shorts and flip-flops. I was now in Washington, D.C. That's where Land Rover was located at the time. I'm I am going to look mega professional, which for all good Southern girls, the key to looking professional, a cardigan sweater, of course, and a pearl necklace, which I wear one every single day. So I rolled in my super professional look. The first person I meet in the elevator asked me if I was a high school intern. I was like, I am the new project manager. And the funny story about this guy, he works for me now. You never know who you're gonna meet, I promise you. Like, people become very important along the way. So like, lift your head up from your phone and look around you and talk to people. So anyway, I start this job at Land Rover. One of my first meetings, again, I guess I looked really young at the time, which now I would take. But at the time, you're sort of trying to prove yourself in a profession, which I didn't really have much skill set. I had a bit of an internet background now, not much else. So I got this group of people together for our project team, and I'm like, this is what we're gonna do. This guy looks at me, he's like, why should we listen to you? Like, what could you possibly know? I was like, I know lots. So I still do this. I went to Notre Dame. I government Spanish major, thank you. A law degree, and I worked at a startup company for like a year and a half. I was so upset. And I literally, other than my friend Dean, I didn't know anyone else at the company. I left the building. I went to Taco Bell. Nachos Bel Grande. I worked my way back to the office. And I looked at this guy and I was like, we have to work together. Like, I need your help. And fortunate for me, he was like, oh, okay. When you don't have confidence, because you don't think, I don't know, what do I say? What look sounds right? I didn't know. I was so early in my career. So anyway, I had Dean, and he sort of helped me. And my career at Land Rover started to take off. So Ford bought Land Rover, and they asked me, what contract are you on? I was like, oh, I'm on my own contract. Oof, I'm probably gonna have to let you go. I was like, let me go. All right, I just got in the door here. I'll do anything. I will take any job. Please, please, please don't fire me. Because believe it or not, this is in the year 99, 2000. The internet job at companies did not exist. It's crazy to imagine, but it didn't. And they said, you know what, there's one job available. I was like, what is it? I'll do it, just tell me. Data entry. Boom. I'm doing it. I will do data entry. And they're like, and we'll let you do the internet thing too. I was like, oh good, I get 2 jobs. So negotiation skills, not that good when I was in my 20s. They've gotten better now. So Ford buys Land Rover. I take the job. And what was hard for me really, the company moved back to California, is I started looking for role models. Because I'm young in my career and I'm trying to figure out what does it look like? What does it look like to be a manager? And I'd walk past all the corner offices, all the fancy offices. And every time I looked in those offices, there were basically middle-aged white men in navy suits. And I'm like, well, I'm not a middle-aged white man and I don't wear suits, so this could be tough. Because you're looking for role models, right? You're looking for mentors. You're looking for someone to make sense of how does it look? What does a leader actually look like? And I think too, I was so fixated on looks that I wasn't even thinking about mentally what does it look like? What are the skill sets? I just wanted something to try to relate to. And a couple of people noticed my work ethic, which again, everything that everyone said no to, literally every job people rejected, I was like, I'll do it. Again, I had no business background. I didn't know how to do an Excel spreadsheet. I took classes at night. I didn't tell anyone. I faked all sorts of things until I figured them out. And someone said to me, you really need to learn the car business. We're not totally sure this internet thing's going to take off. So maybe I should have stuck with the internet. I would have been one of the first internet people and created some cool app, and now I'd be retired. But anyway, I went out in the field and started really learning the car business. That's where I met another really important person in my life. So I got a job that I was told I was completely unqualified for. And it was basically working with the dealers and being a business liaison between the car dealers and back at corporate headquarters. I didn't know anything about how a car dealership works, but there was a woman who owns a dealership in Boston, and she's like, look, I'm gonna help you. Come work here for 2 weeks. She literally let me work at the dealership for 2 weeks. I'm a kid, I'm 29, 30 years old. She's another one of my mentors and a very, very good friend of mine, and she's the person that's helped me along the way. Before I took this job at Aston Martin, she's the person I sat down with to say, should I take it or not? So again, back to you never know who you're gonna meet, and it's okay to ask for help. I went in being I don't want her to know I don't know anything. But she she knew that, and she's like, let me help you. So anyway, my career starts to take off a bit. I started having skill sets that other people didn't have. I still struggled with when I got invited into the boardroom, what those meetings look like, and where was I supposed to sit. So everyone will read some of the things that Sheryl Sandberg says, and she's brilliant. But I always sat in the second row. You know, so if you go to a boardroom, you see the big round table, and there's all the seats. I never sat at the main seat. I always sat the seat behind, because I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be here. Please take the seat at the table, I beg you. I wish I hadn't waited so long to do so. But anyway, I moved around 8 times in 10 years. Again, every job no one wanted, I took. But as I was doing that, I actually was really building my resume. I was building my skill sets. And there was another really pivotal moment when there was a job. Every time I got rejected from a job, if there's a job you apply for, ask why. Like literally ask them why they didn't hire you. And every time they gave me a why, then I went and got the thing that they said I didn't have. And then when I apply again and I get rejected for something else, I'm like, okay, well, tell me why. Pretty soon, there were no more whys because I basically had all the skill sets pretty much necessary to run a car company, which is a cool thing. So I finally get to this one job, which was going to be my breakthrough to become like a general manager. And they hired this guy, and he's actually also a friend of mine. He decided to move back to Detroit. And the company was like, what are we going to do? This guy's left, getting ready right before the recession. And I walked into the door of the VP's office. I said, wow, what are you all going to do? You know, I applied for this job. He's like, yeah, you're really close to getting it. All right, what if you give it to me now? Because you got nobody. Give me 90 days. And if I'm not doing it, get rid of me. Because you got nobody. You got to go through a whole recruiting process again. Give me 90 days. Anyway, they didn't regret the decision, and it became a really important job in my career. The company then moved me to New York, bounced me around sales, marketing, operations, pretty much every form of anything that's not engineering or design I've done in the car industry. And they said, you know, Laura, we want to move you internationally. So when these things come up, you kind of can't be like, oh, but where's it going to be? I'm not sure. I was like, yes, wherever you want to send me, I will go. And I was fortunate enough to go to England and to be the head of marketing for both Jaguar and Land Rover. Not bad for a girl with a government Spanish degree from Notre Dame to be the head of marketing with no marketing skill set to begin with. And when I got to the UK, you know, my confidence level was really pretty high at that point. You know, the company had selected me out of about 40 to 50,000 employees. There were probably like 100, 200 directors, maybe 10 women, if that many. And I landed in the UK. I do remember landing at Heathrow being like, what have I done to myself? I have one friend here. I don't know anybody. I'm going to do this so like British people love Americans. Not 100%. I wasn't going to be in London. I was going to be up in the Midlands. And I remember my first day walking into the office, and I'm like, morning, y'all. People were like, so, huh? Head back down. I'm like, okay, there's, you know, just because we speak the same language, there are some cultural differences. But when I got there, you know, really started making an impact, had a lot of exposure to the board, the global CEO, and they really got to see kind of what I was about. But along the way, these paths have not been easy. I've been told I definitely should cut my hair, because like no one's going to take anyone serious who has long hair. So that's why I wear it so long. I need to not smile quite so much, because people that smile as much can't be taken seriously. I'm like, I'm from the South, like we permanently smile even when we're unhappy. Like that's what you're taught to do. So I smile a lot. And I should probably, you know, think about wearing pantsuits. So every time I was told, you know, I needed to wear a suit for a meeting, I would show up in a dress. And they're like, oh, well, you know, we sort of asked you to wear a suit. I was like, well, I guess you should just go ahead and have the meeting without me. Oh, we can't. And I was like, guess I'm coming in then. So you've got to be pretty confident in yourself to get to that point. And the pivotal point when I was able to start behaving that way was when I stopped trying to act like everyone around me. Because I'm in a room with all men all the time. I can't act like them, and I shouldn't. I stopped trying to mimic, what does their notepad look like? How do they take notes? How do they raise their hand? How do they ask questions? Like, what's the tone? What's the intonation? The second I stopped doing all of that, and actually went back to the advice my mother had given me my entire life, was to just be myself, that's when people really started remembering me. So the career started going really well in the UK. It's such a fun job, running marketing. An important thing for me in England, I never was necessarily wanting to get married because I just didn't really think there was time for it. And I always thought like guys like me, sports, love, check. Cars I love, check. I hate communicating with them, check. So I'm like the perfect woman, right? Please don't text me and can we just talk about sports and cars. But when I got to the UK, I have the one friend I have, back to the important people that you pick up along the way, this friend of mine, Frank, he had moved to England right before I had, met a group of guys, and he was like, Laura, you are so boring. So I'm not boring, I am so much fun. He's like, you literally never go out. So one night, which was the night of the royal wedding when William and Kate got married. So in England, when there's a royal wedding or a baby's born or anything like that, it is like that tailgate out there on Saturday night. Like people are going like effing crazy and it's really, really fun. So I go out, and of course, where do you meet people other than a pub? So I walked into a pub in the little town that I lived in, and Frank was there, and he introduced me to this tall, handsome British person named Nick, who proceeded to ask me if I would like to go out with him sometime, and I was like, absolutely not. He then asked me out for 4 more months. On the 4th of July in England, he made me a homemade apple pie and brought it to my door. And I was like, okay, who goes through this much trouble? I was like, I guess I have to go out with this guy. And then on our first date, I would say he must have Googled like how to impress a girl from Kentucky because he took me to like the horse races. Like we were just missing the flask of bourbon and we would have been fine. So anyway, we go out on this date. But as I start dating Nick, actually a few things changed, and this is the reason why I bring him up. All of a sudden, I wanted to leave the office. So I had like 100+ people working for me. And I'd always be like, everyone have a good night. I'm gonna keep working. So back in this whole, I think I've had imposter syndrome literally like my entire career. Like I don't know it, I better learn it. And I'd like work and work and work and work. Well, all of a sudden I wanted to see this guy. So I would leave at like 7 and they're like, she's leaving. Like, are we allowed to leave too? And then I was like, you were always allowed to leave. Like I'm the one with the illness that doesn't like leave the office. But I actually became such a better manager because I started having a bit of a life, and then I think they were like, oh, thank God, we don't have to be here all night. So anyway, Nick and I get married, and things are going really well. And my career at Jaguar Land Rover, I'm so appreciative of what they've given me, went really well. The plan was for me to be one of the first female board members and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I really wasn't looking to do anything else. I felt like there was enough for me there. And again, back to the random people that you meet along the way. I get a message from a guy who's the chief marketing officer at Aston Martin. And he and I had worked in California together when I was like lowly data entry person. But he had been like, wow, she works really hard and she's working on this weird thing called the internet. Anyway, he contacts me and he's like, Laura, after all these years, and we're talking about a lot of years here, he's like, I can't believe that you and I are both working in Middle England. Would you like to come take a tour of the Aston Martin factory? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So anyway, sign up with him to go take the tour. Meanwhile, things are going great at Jaguar Land Rover. I've met pretty much every member of the royal family, which is funny when a girl from Kentucky is about to meet royalty. People, like your PR team starts to panic. Because they're like, she's gonna F it up. And I'm like, I'm not. I went to Cotillion. I know how to like turn scenes and hands on people in the eye, please. But there's a funny story when I met Prince Charles for the first time. You know, it's like, okay, she's meeting the future king. Like, this is a big one. His helicopter is like landing. And I'm standing there, and he gets out. It's just like me, a member of his team, and the guy on our team that like runs the royal family. And he stands there, and I do my curtsy, and I say everything I'm supposed to say. And they're like, Laura Schwab, head of marketing for Jaguar Land Rover. And I'm like, nice to meet you, like with a Kentucky accent. He's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm the head of marketing for Jaguar Land Rover. Well, that's not how they say Jaguar in the UK, it's Jaguar. And he's like, well, where are you from? I said, well, I'm from Royal Leamington Spa. And he starts laughing, because I'm obviously not from Royal Leamington Spa, I'm from Kentucky. And there's a picture of Prince Charles like pointing at me and laughing. And that graced the cover of the newspaper that weekend. So I shipped that thing back to Louisville, Kentucky to my family, and I was like, look at me. And my mom was like, what did you say? Like, what did you do? Like, you messed things up. I was like, no. Like, royal relations are intact. Everything's fine. No one needs to panic. It's all handled here. So anyway, I've accepted the offer to go to the factory tour. I get to Aston Martin. I walk in the door, and I see this guy, Simon. I hadn't seen him in 15 years. And I said, why did you reach out to me? He goes, I always remembered how you worked with everyone, because I'm obsessed with cultures and I'm obsessed with teams. And he's like, I loved the way you always engage with other people. Now to see your career in such an amazing place, I just wanted to reach out. He's like, let me show you how these cars are made. So I'll geek out about cars for just a second, because cars are one of the few things in life that make people feel huge emotions. And I mean, I literally had people chasing me in the parking lot in this Aston Martin earlier this morning because they wanted to say hi and see the car. Like, not everything makes people feel that way. So anyway, we walk into the door of the factory. It's silent. And I'm like, why is it so quiet? He's like, let me show you, because the cars are all handmade. He talks through the 106 years of heritage and history and what makes Aston Martin unique. And we're an independent car company, and 300 man hours to make every single car, and the legacy of the people that have worked in this factory. And I'm like blown away. And he's like, Laura, I want you to meet someone. We happened to run into the global CEO on our factory tour. He's like, meet Andy Palmer. And I was like, Andy, great job. I was like, y'all are crushing it here. And Andy's like, let me tell you what we're up to, Laura. And I was like, please do. He's like, I joined the company a year ago. We've created the second century plan, so Aston Martin's over 100 years old. The next 100 years, we're launching 7 new cars in 7 years. We're right in the middle of that right now. He said, I've been following your career, following my career. He said, and we want you to be part of what's happening at Aston Martin. I was like, holy shit, this is a job interview? Is this how it works? I was like, one LinkedIn about coming to the factory tour, and now I'm being interviewed for a job. So I look at Andy and I said, wow, I wasn't quite prepared for this, so let me think about it. When you realize that you've married the right person in life, the right partner, this is when they become really important. So I go home, sit down with Nick, and he's like, tell me about Aston Martin. He's like, I love Aston Martin. Everyone loves Aston Martin. It's like the coolest brand on the planet, James Bond's car. It's like total badass. So he's like, I talked to him through the whole thing. I said, they offered me a job. He goes, oh, wow, really? He's like, it was a job interview. I was like, surprised me too. Anyway, he's like, well, what is it? And then I told him the job. I was like, well, they want me to be president of Aston Martin. And he looks at me and he goes, that's the coolest fucking job in the world. I was like, actually, I think it is. Back to me not liking to talk that much about important things with my partner. I was like, well, what do you think we should do? Normally, like, when you have, like, something like this happen, you're like, oh, better go out to talk, or, like, better sleep on it, or all those things that people do. He didn't hesitate. He's like, I guess we're moving. Where is it? I mean, this guy's got a career in England. He's brilliant. So it's in Southern California. He goes, I guess we're moving to California. We didn't have the talk. I went to Jaguar Land Rover. I told them about it instantly. I was like, I'm not going to play games. This company's given me my career. I was very honest. They asked me how long I would stay and work. I worked until Friday night at 6 p.m. I started at Aston Martin on the Monday. I should have taken a week off, but whatever. I've got like an issue there. So anyway, I start the job. I moved to California. It's like my 4th time living in California. Nick's going to stay in England, and he's going to get his visa. I mean, it all happened like so fast. And anyway, one other personal thing, we had decided that we really didn't want to have children. Like, you know, again, I talk about this, like my obsession with like, I think it actually was the imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know, I just have to keep working. Like, you know, they're not going to believe I know how to do this stuff. So we decided we didn't want children. Great life. We had a dog. Our weekends, we would literally on a Friday be like, hey, should we just like shuttle down to Paris? We're like, yeah, why not? This is fun. Anyway, it's our anniversary, and I'm like not that young. I was like 42. Nick comes to see me. We're like really happy to see one another, and I get pregnant. So I'm 5 weeks into this job at Aston Martin. I'm not only the first female president of Aston Martin, I am one of 2 women to have ever had this title in the automotive industry, ever. And so my first feeling was, they're gonna wish they hired a man. And I don't know why I felt like that, but I did, because like what man doesn't want to be the president of Aston Martin? It's like a really cool car company. And I think that was all in me, like no one made me feel that way other than myself. And then I was like, oh my God, all those women that have worked for me that have had children, and they had to tell me, like, did I make them feel badly? I started calling people. Remember 4 years ago when you worked for me and you didn't tell me, like, were you nervous? Was I nice about it? They're like, Laura, you were great. I was like, okay, I'm acting like a crazy person, but I just had all these emotions around it. Anyway, I called Amy Palmer, and I was like, well, I've got something to talk to you about. I was like, oh my God, you're not happy. I was like, no, everything's fine. I'm pregnant. And he's like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna like have like get really big and like probably have a baby, and I don't know, like take some time off. Like I'm not sure how this whole thing works, but there's probably something that happens like that. So the company was like super supportive. My first year at Aston Martin, Nick was still getting his visa, so we only got to see each other twice during my pregnancy, which when you're taking over a car company, buying a house, being pregnant, my support systems in Kentucky, that was a hard year, you know? And all of a sudden, I'd always dreamed of being the boss. Like, because I was always like little steps, like, well, maybe I'll be a manager. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I never thought I would be like this role. But it can feel really lonely. Like, there I am, like all by myself out in California. And that was a tough year. Fortunately, you know, then I had to rebuild the team, rebuild relationships. I mean, there was so much work to do, you know, write a strategic plan. You know, I wrote a business plan within my first 90 days through all of like my morning illness and everything else. But we started getting the brand on the track that I wanted it to be on. Nick showed up like 5 days before our daughter was born. Good timing, Nick. Got there just in time. And we have a beautiful 3-year-old named Marie who's named after my mom. So yeah, so what are we doing at Aston Martin? What am I doing and what am I passionate about? I'm obviously passionate about cars. I'm passionate about my family, but I'm actually unbelievably passionate about cultures. And the type of culture you create and the people you surround yourselves with and being part of a team. Mentorship is something that I cannot talk enough about. I don't think people know what it means to have a mentor. I think they think it has to be this really hard, structured thing. You need someone that you can talk to. They do not need to be in the same business that you are in. Some of my mentors and some of my best mentors are actually outside of the automotive industry because I can get so obsessed with the details of automotive. They come at it from a completely unique perspective. And then all of a sudden it doesn't feel so big, you know? So I really encourage you to have mentors. And mentors are not people that just look, think, and act like you. Have men, have women, different fields. You don't need just one, but you definitely need at least one mentor. It's very, very important. And as you heard me talk along the way, my mentors are the ones. So Dean, the guy who got me my first job, he's like a really good friend of mine and lives up the road. So I see him all the time and we bounce ideas off of one another. And for me in this role, it's great to have those types of people. It just kind of creates some like sanity to the day. The other thing I'm really passionate about is women empowering women. And I'm always incredibly humbled that I represent this incredible brand, but I've been blown away that this university would ask me to come speak to a group like this. It's been an interesting turn in the last 2 years that women and men, but people have wanted to hear my story because I tell the whole thing because it wasn't like I made every perfect decision. It wasn't that I never got rejected from jobs. All those things happened, but it never let it get me down, and anything I didn't have, I just sort of like busted my ass to get there, but still being myself. I sort of never compromised me to get there, and then I picked these people up along the way. They've helped me pave my career, but for us as women, I see this a lot, especially in industries that are typically male-dominated. Women sometimes beat other women up because we think there's only space for one of us at the table, right? It's like, so we'll look at a boardroom like, oh, there's one woman. Like, the first thing isn't like, well, what? There should be 5. We're like, well, I hope I end up being that one. I'm good if you're bad. I've seen it so often in my career, and now is the time it has to stop. And I'm so privileged that you all are part of this group and that you're doing this, because we have to stick together. Our voices together will be louder than your voice on your own. So I beg you, if there's people in this room that you don't know or you haven't spent time with, don't just glom on to the same person you see every single time you come here. Shake the hand of someone you don't normally talk to. You have no idea how important that person, that friendship could be in your life. And I think for me, the work is really hard. I never want to be the person now that I always thought I wanted the corner office, and then when they finally handed it to me, I was like, oh, I'm not sitting in that office. I'm sitting out with everybody else. But it's challenging, and I'm constantly pushing myself to think differently, to create the type of culture that I want to be part of. When I look to interview people, if you're looking for a specific skill set, yes, the person needs to have it. I'm looking at how they speak. Do they say I or do they say we? What kind of team? How do they respond? Do they laugh at themselves like, oh, I totally messed that up? One of the best hires I ever had, I had asked this really ridiculous HR question, and I felt like, I can't believe I have to ask this question. I'm like, like we're going to be in 5 years or something like ridiculous like that. Like, who the hell knows? Anyway, this girl starts to answer the question, and she stopped midpoint, and she's like, I literally have no idea what I'm saying right now. And I was like, I'm hiring her. She was honest, right? That's what you want. Those are the people that you want on your team, like people that are honest, that want to work together. Together, it feels so much better to have a collective victory than one on your own. So I look for people and cultures of people that want to be part of that. I can teach anyone the car business for the most part, but I can't teach people to care about one another. And I promise that's the type of culture you want to create, and people are looking at you for what that should look like. So we're busy doing it. You mentioned the sales. We're doing a great job. That's not me. I'm the spokesperson. The team's working their asses off. But they're excited about it. I don't want people that watch the clock. I want them to want to be there and want to be part of it. And I'm really fortunate right now. I'm working with the best team in the business. Nick is great. We're on airplanes every week. Marie is a little terrorist at times, but she's incredible. But when my alarm goes off every morning at 4:30, and someone's like, well, why would you get so early to come speak to the rowing team today? Because if I can make an impact on one person, that will help open the door so that my daughter is never one of 2 of anything, then I guess I would say that my time has been well spent. So anyway, that's my story, and I'll let you guys ask me some questions. Thanks for having me. Okay, who's got a question? Cars. Oh, you want to say something? Oh God, don't speak in Spanish. You know I can't speak Spanish. What am I supposed to do with that? Can someone translate it? Okay, do you want a microphone?
No, it's okay. I was going to say that I speak Spanish. I'm so proud of you. This is a very amazing story and really encouraging me. I'm a custodian, but I make it here as part of my supervisor, taking down. I want to come very close, right? But I totally forgot about this when I got this email today, and I was thinking about it. And I'm like, I'm going to make it. So I'm here. So thank you so much.
Help me learn Spanish again. Any questions or comments?
How have you been able to adjust to now a family life and balancing the time for work restrictions and requirements that you have to do with balancing?
Yeah, so the question is like, how do I balance it all? Not that well. I don't. So I mean, I'm really like straightforward about that. You know, people are like, oh, you've got it all. How do you do it? I'm like, I don't know. I'm waking up at 4:30 every morning. So, you know, I think I've got the priorities right. You know, we've got obviously help at home. But there's days where I get on an airplane and I start crying because it's another week that I'm away. You know, my daughter, when they turn 3, like, she's really picking up on things now. And when you hear this, like, Mommy, don't go. You know, and that's really hard. And I think what's, you know, sometimes I see men and women like, oh, we're doing it. I'm like, well, we are doing it too. But I will never say that it's easy. Which is why when I go to work, I try to ensure that the work I do feels meaningful that day. So I don't go and just bury my head in email. So by the way, like, as you're sitting here, you're getting like a bazillion emails. No one's going to answer them for you, and they're not going to go away. And if they really, really need a response from you, they will chase you down. When I go to work, I'm so passionate about, especially the young people on the team, do you know how to set your priorities? What's your plan for the day? What's a week look like? You know, really getting my directors and vice presidents, you know, like my CMO, my chief sales officer, like, what's our plan with these guys? Like, how do we make sure that the time we spend is meaningful and not just how do I get my inbox to 5? And for me, that's how, well, like, if you have like a mild case of OCD like I do, it's very easy to get obsessed about how many emails are in your inbox. I try to make sure that when I'm there, that time is meaningful and it's impacting other lives and it's not just, I got my inbox to 5, you know. But how do we balance it? Not that well. I always tell people, ask my husband the same thing. He's doing the exact same thing I am. We like high five in between flights and get on another one. So I don't know. We said maybe the current schedule is not sustainable because it's kind of outrageous right now. But I just try to make sure that when I show up, people are like, how do you show up with so much energy? I'm like, if I'm going to come in, I'm definitely not going to half-ass it, or I'll just go and stay at home and actually see my daughter. So that's kind of what motivates me. Yes?
When did you first recognize imposter syndrome in yourself, and what have you done to try to overcome that?
I think I probably had it, like, you know, when I was here at school. Honestly, you know, you sit in these classrooms and you pretty much assume that everyone's smarter than you because they got to Notre Dame. I don't know if I recognized it in myself, but then I was like, why am I like obsessing over I need to take these classes? Like, no one else is doing this stuff. But sometimes I don't have it probably so much anymore. Like, I kind of know my shit, but you have to start recognizing it and figure out how to get over it because it will impact your confidence, and the confidence becomes really, really important, especially if you're trying to find ways to break through. But I'm pretty sure I definitely had it in law school. I assumed everyone knew more than me. I'm not sure why. They didn't. I didn't really do that badly, but once you recognize it, I think it's a matter of like, don't act like a crazy person and stay in the office till like midnight every night. It's like, recognize, have your mentor, start talking through it. Like, the sooner you start talking through it, it's like you can get to the other side of it. But yeah, it's a tough one. I think I've probably had it my whole life. And, you know, again, it's hard. Like, when you're the only woman, it starts to manifest itself in your brain in, like, many different ways. But then I think, again, I just started getting to the point where, like, I'm just going for it, you know? And You start losing some of your ambitions as you get older. You do. I know you're filming this, you have to edit this part out, okay? Because she probably doesn't want me to repeat this story, but I was fortunate enough to meet Muffet McGraw this summer, and the university asked me to come speak to the football team. And that's like fucking crazy, right? Like me, little girl from Louisville, Kentucky, I just happen to run the coolest car company in the world. Anyway, I got to meet Muffet, and the one question I really wanted to ask her was, how did you know it was time? You know, like, how did you know it was time just to say what you've been thinking? And, you know, she talked about, like, well, you know, she told me a story of what the impetus was behind it, but also, too, as you get older, she's like, I've been successful. I'm not afraid anymore. And then you just believe what you're saying and go for it. So I don't think you grow out of it. You learn to compartmentalize and deal with it and move forward. Any questions? Yes. Okay, I'll go. Because you're wearing a cardigan. No offense to the non-cardigan. I love the cardigan. I know.
I was just wondering if you had any recommended readings or podcasts that you listen to that you think can help inspire us.
Yeah, so I read a lot, and pretty much anything. I mean, if you've not read anything that Sheryl Sandberg's written, like, you really, really should, because she's amazing, and I think I've been blown away by what she does and how she goes about it. I watch every featured TED Talk, and it's not always just about leadership, because I kind of get more people telling me how to be a leader. I kind of got what I'm doing now. It's more ways to inspire me and things that I don't know about. And then I have an obsession with Twitter, which is a problem. So I start obsessing over Google algorithms at midnight, and I'm like, oh my God, they probably just changed it again. Let me search for some stuff. But for me, when I finally started reading what Sheryl was doing, that really impacted me. She talks about leaning in. I'm like, it didn't quite work like that. If you've never read anything by Tina Fey, please read Tina Fey's book, because, well, she's hysterical, right? But I love that approach. I've often used humor to get myself out of situations where I've felt really intimidated. And she kind of did the same thing. She's one of the first female writers ever for Saturday Night Live. So her book was super meaningful to me. Every year, and I actually took this from Sarah, I started telling my team to read one leadership book and do a book report for me. So they're going to send me a whole bunch of new stuff. So I'll send it out to you. I run out of time. I don't have other people help me with all the reading I need to do. What was your question?
Thank you for coming and speaking with us. I was wondering, of the skills that you've had or acquired along the way, what have you found most valuable and why?
What skill sets have I found most valuable and why? Probably being part of a team. And playing sports ended up being the thing that I think really propelled me and my confidence. So, and when you play sports, you start understanding what it really means to fight for other people. And I think that's what's really translated into because now, I dictate the culture of a company. I don't get to complain about it anymore. I actually am the one creating it. And what I've really tapped into, probably more than I realized, was what it really meant to be part of a team. When you've played sports and you've represented this amazing university, you get nervous sometimes. So when I go and speak to big crowds and stuff like that, people are like, do you get nervous? I'm like, oh God, no. Playing the NCAA tournament for Notre Dame, I would get nervous. Speaking to people, not so much. But I really think sports sort of help define, whenever I'm in a place where I'm like, God, how do I get back out? I actually sort of tap into some of that. Another skill set that's become hugely important for me, and athletes do this all the time, when you get in a rut and you can't see the way out, it happens to all of us. So when you play sports and you lose, it feels like crap. The great athletes show up the next day and it's like they've forgotten that it happened. So I get asked oh, well, don't you take work home with you? Or you hear the question what keeps you up at night? Not work. I can't remember the last time I had a dream about work, ever. I sort of take it, I bank it, and I think that's why when I show up, I never ever tell people I'm tired, even if I am. Because it's everyone's probably tired. No one wants to hear you're tired. I'm kind of like, I've parked it, I've had a good night's sleep, and I show up the next day. So I tap in a lot to those sort of like mental things that become so part from an athletic standpoint, but you don't have to have been an athlete to know how to do that. You know, I'd say like, don't take it home with you. Like when you're with your family or anyone you care about or love, like enjoy them. You know, for me, that's what helps me the next day to come in and be like, okay, people, we've got this. You know, they're looking for me to what the behavior should look like. So that's really, really helped me. And I never dream about work. Thank goodness. And yes.
Thank you so much. It's amazing that you have such a badass job, but your story is still so relatable.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you about kind of the balance between, you know, having imposter syndrome, but also knowing your worth. When you've gotten all these promotions, have you had to negotiate really hard, or did you compromise on certain benefits or salary or title just to kind of inch upwards?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So a couple things on what have I compromised on, or how have I sort of found a way to work my way through. First thing, I always assumed everyone knew I wanted to be a manager. I was like, well, of course they must know I want to be a manager. I mean, I never assumed I'd be like president and CEO, but my goal was like, maybe I'll be a manager. And I was in the same job for like 4 years. And finally, because no one gave me mid-year reviews and end-of-the-year reviews. I'm like, well, shouldn't I have one? I've been like, you know, in the same job. And I said, I really want to progress. Oh, we didn't know. Don't assume everyone knows what you want your next move to be. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, I need to start being a bit more vocal about what my intent is. I have compromised on like, oh, well, we can give you this, but we won't give you the level, or we'll give you 90 days, and then if you do it, we'll do this. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take it. I would go back and do that differently, because now I've learned, like, if I get asked to do something, or if I'm getting recruited or anything like that, I ain't going backwards. And all of a sudden, people appreciate that you're like, no, this is my expectation. I've never thought of myself as a great negotiator. But then as I started to move up, I started like, if you want me, these are my expectations. And I did research before I showed up at the negotiation table versus like going in cold. So I go back to my friend in Boston who taught me the car business and be like, okay, I've got this on the table, what do you think? Don't do it on your own. Don't sit there and be like, I don't know, because we don't like to talk about salaries and things like that. This is where your mentor and the people you surround yourself with is so important. But I think the imposter syndrome thing did preclude me from probably titles that I maybe could have had sooner, salaries that I probably could have had sooner. I mean, I guarantee it. But make sure that you let your intent know to your manager. Like, don't assume that they know what your next move is. Or if you don't know, it's like, I want to start thinking about it. Like, can you help me? Don't assume that they're sitting around thinking about your career aspirations. And that's what I did. And I think, you know, again, did I lose a few years? I don't know. It could have been 6 months. Doesn't really matter. But I wish I'd done it sooner. Yes.
Kind of connected to that, but did you ever encounter a Me Too moment? And how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky. The question was, have I ever encountered anything that sort of falls into the Me Too movement? I mean, obviously, I worked in again, I'm not kidding, like, I am, like, the only woman, right? I've been fortunate enough that all of the men I've been surrounded by have been unbelievably supportive of me. I've also made sure that, you know, when there's a late night out, I don't stay out as late. I come home. You know, I try not to, like, put myself in those positions, because, of course, I'm obsessed with getting back and working, because I've got a problem, but I haven't encountered it. But what I would say is this, and I heard someone say this the other day, I'm so sick of hearing about it. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. You're sick of hearing about it. I'm pretty sure for the last however many decades, people were sick of holding it in. And I think it's such an important time for women that we continue to have the conversation. And if there's any, like, apathy from people, or they're sick of hearing about it, like, we have to continue this conversation. It's such a pivotal moment for women. And so I really encourage people to not be afraid to speak out, because I have seen people say, well, if I say something, I will now be branded that person and I'll never get another promotion again. No, that's not right, or you're not working for that company, honestly. So we've got to keep talking about it. Okay.
You've talked a lot about the importance of mentorship, and I read somewhere that you set aside one day a month for your mentoring. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you pay it forward, and also you talked about the importance of finding mentors that are outside of your immediate industry, and I'm just curious like how one goes about.
So this is a question about mentorship, and it's about how do you find mentors and how do you pay it forward. So once a month I put a day aside, and I've got everything from like 20-year-old kids in college through to very successful executives that I mentor, which is so funny. But it's become really important to me because of how important my mentors were for me and to get to this position. So you don't have to be president to be a mentor. And by the way, based on all these kids I've talked to since I've been on campus, they're begging for mentors, begging, because they don't know what it looks like. They think it's this like big formal thing. It doesn't have to be. So again, I became really passionate about ensuring that that I put that time aside. Second point is how do you find the person outside of your industry? You know, again, it's back to you don't know who you're going to meet along the way. So one of mine is Dr. Neely Bendapudi, and she's the president of the University of Louisville. We happened to give a speech together in Louisville, Kentucky. I stood next to her, and I said, "Is there? I know you'd be my mentor." She's like, "Well, only if you'll be mine." She's like, "I don't know if that's how it works." But okay. You know, so again, don't be afraid to ask. It's like what I just talked about. Like, don't be afraid to ask for the job. Like, you know, and then if someone's like, "No, I don't think I have time," it's like, "Hey, thanks. Let me know what you do." But don't forget about it. Again, just don't be afraid to ask. You know, if you ever go to conferences and forums and things like that, don't just sit with the people you know. Walk out the door with a contact, a connection, anyone. I mean, that stuff becomes so important. I ask my team once a quarter to do something that isn't showing up at the office every day. Like, go to a seminar, go do something. 4 times a year, you should do something that isn't just showing up here and going to work every day. You will be so much more productive. You'll be different thinking, which is why you asked, like, what are you reading? Go do something to help influence your thinking on a daily basis. I know I'm conscious of time. Any other final questions? Yes?
So how would you say you're own, right? So how are you making it so that it's different now?
Yeah, the question is, I'm the only woman, how am I making it any different? When I joined my company, there were 0 females in our executive leadership team. It's now 50% female. So I'm hiring women. And by the way, it's not, I didn't compromise anything. I literally hired the best, and they happen to be women. So anyway, we'll let you all eat your lunches if you did. Thank you so much for having me here. Humbled to stand in front of you, and please keep this group going. It's fabulous. Thank you.